Hello everybody and welcome to Operation Logistics, where we've got another problem with our adjacencies between hexes for some reason that I'm not entirely sure about. So where do we set those up? Well, we do grab neighbors here, and that gets us the building hex neighbors, but that's not actually where we do it. If I recall correctly, we do it in the... not even here. I believe we do it in the world hex. And we set up our neighbors right about here, actually. So neighbor distance, blah, 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 current hex.neighbors. Okay, where do we actually set this up at? Right here. This is where we set it up. So, if we are any of these hexes, then we get our position, and we get our biomes. We find the nearest biome hex, which makes sense. And then we check to see if we are closer to the center of that biome hex than to the center of our own biome hex, to see if we're on the edge or not. Because if we're inside of this biome hex here, the distance from here to here is greater than this distance. Hang on, that might be a problem. Our distance is from building.location minus near.transform.position. If we are closer to this than the center of our biome hex, so if this distance here is less than this distance, then we know it's closer. We know we're in between here. Okay, yeah, that's correct. And if that's the case, then we're remaining in the same world hex, and we just set it up like so. So in the case of this, we are in map hex 37, and we want to connect up to map hex 21 inside of here. So 37 connects up to 21. Neighbor equals new int3 new building.location.world hex near.hex index 21. Then we add in that neighbor. Biome hexes i.neighbors, new building.location.building hex.add neighbor. Okay, easy enough. And then our biome location equals new int3 neighbor.world hex neighbor.biome hex -1. If biome hexes i.biome neighbors.contains biome location, if the biome does not know that it's neighboring this location, we should add it. Okay, seems easy enough. So why isn't this working? Why isn't this working indeed? So let's take a quick look at what our neighbor list that we populate in here is. So our neighbors are grabbed down here. For each building in current.neighbors. So building.neighbors is where we do this from. Building.neighbors gets neighbors by creating a return list. And then for each int3 location in manager.business.hexmanager.getBuildingNeighbors of location, which of course is hexstore biome equals get hexstore by index hex.world hex hex.biome hex. So it grabs the hex store, and then it returns biome.neighbors of hex.building hex. So that's just a nice little helpful function there. But and then we do for each int3 location that returns, building neighbor equals manager.business.hexmanager.getBuilding by index location. If neighbor is not equal to null, so if it exists, then return list.add neighbor, and we return the return list. I don't see a problem there. Okay. So, hang on. I just had an idea here. If biome hexes to consider .count is not equal to 0, then we continue. Else if building.location.biome hex is not equal to current.location.biome hex, we continue. So if we're not leaving the biome hex, then we do this. Otherwise, we just don't count this building. Hang on a moment. So, why are we doing this again? This is for biome hex inclusion. Hypothetically. Well, this is for the biome hex pathfinding, right? So let's go ahead and track this through and see if we can figure out exactly what's happening here. So this is the function we usually use. Pathfind, int3 from, int3 to, hex manager, manager. So then we do our world hex and our biome hex inclusion. Determine if we're going out of the world hex. If from.worldHex is not equal to to.worldHex, then we pathfind the world hexes. World hex inclusion equals pathfind in world hexes, manager.getWorldHex by index from.worldHex, manager.getWorldHex by index to.worldHex. And we do biome hex inclusion equals pathfind in biome hexes from to manager world hex inclusion. Okay. Then we return pathfind building to vector 3, manager.getBuilding by index from manager.getBuilding by index to manager biome hex inclusion. So I have a couple of questions here. Why are we returning a vector 3 down here? That's one. My second question is, we know that pathfinding in world hexes is kind of working, right? But pathfinding in biome hexes is only kind of working as well. So when we're neighboring it, it's not working amazingly well. The biome hex inclusion already counts the world hex inclusion. So the reason we're doing this is so that way we don't consider biome hexes that aren't in the list. So my question is, what biome hexes are in the list when this isn't working? But I don't think that's the core problem. I think the core problem is this, that we don't have adjacency here. And the question is, why don't we have adjacency? That should definitely be a thing because of this. So, with that being the case, let's just take a quick look here. I'm going to run this. And eventually it'll start. Okay. So let's come on in here. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Okay, what about up here? 3, 3. But if we buy land here, create a route, take it up here, that works fine. If we take it over here, that does not. Sure it does. There we go. Okay, so let's create a new route here. This time we're going to take it all the way up over here. Okay. Path succeeded. And that's actually pretty neat there, that it did that. So that worked. And that appeared to work perfectly. So we are not in an adjacent hex there. And that is kind of what I'm leaning towards being the problem. So let's go ahead and create a route here. Create a route here. There we go. Select that route. And this time, let's move over to, say, here. Well, that worked. Okay, that's intriguing. Let's delete that route. Create a new route. And we'll take that over to here. Okay, so with the biome hex inclusion, we seem to be having some issues. But when we're pathfinding in world hexes, we don't seem to. Because if we come back up here and remove this route again, create a route, select the route, and we're going to be going, say we're going to go over here. Well, that worked just fine. Nice and fast, no problems. However, if we delete this again, so pathfinding with world hexes seems to work fine. Pathfinding inside of the biome hex seems to work fine. So we seem to only be having the problem when we are leaving the biome hex, but remaining within the world hex. So if we were to try to go, say, here. Null reference exception. It struggled with that one. So, the question then becomes, what's going on there? Well, let's see if we can figure that out. So, up here, we've got our get distance, blah, blah, blah. We've got our world hex get distance. We've got this get distance for the biome hexes. So this is for building, this is for world hex, this is for biome hex. Gotcha. Okay. We've got our compare Fs for the same thing. Takes a hex store. It's kind of awkward. Okay, so we know that it works fine when we have... Hang on. Hang on. I might have figured it out. We know that it works fine when we have a world hex inclusion list. If this is null, then it doesn't work fine. So let's go to pathfinding biome hexes here. And then we're going to say hash set world hexes to consider, blah, 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 new hash set world hex. For each world hex and world hex conclusion, inclusion, we add that. Okay, so we've got our candidate hex here, equals manager.getHexStore by index, blah, blah, blah. We do that before we do our check here. So, if world hexes to consider.count is not equal to 0, if world hexes, if it is equal to 0, then what? What do we do if it's equal to 0 here? We do an else, like this, that we don't do up here. So, we don't do this else. If building.location.biomehex is not equal to current.location.biomehex, we continue. So if world hexes to consider .count is not equal to 0, if world hexes to consider does not contain manager.getWorldHex by index candidatehex.indices.worldhex. So if we how many hang on, I want a debug log here. Debug.log world hexes to consider .count. Okay, let's compile that in. And then I want to run a really fast test here, just to see what that number actually is. Come on, you can do it. Okay, so we're going to come on in here. We're going to go ahead and purchase, say, this clearing. Create root. Select the root. And we're going to come over here. Okay, so we got a null reference exception, which was expected. Path failed, no connections found. It didn't output this at all. Now isn't that intriguing? That certainly is intriguing. We got path failed, no connections found. So our pathfind in biome hexes appears to be pretty broken. I'm not sure exactly how yet, or how we're going to fix it, but that, I think, is a job for next episode. Subscribe for more, and I will see you all next time.